orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and bonobos. Bonobos are what we address as critically endangered. This is defined by the IUCN Red List. They do a lot of work for conservation in these areas. And critically endangered means that they could likely be extinct in the wild in a matter of decades. And again, this is due to habitat loss, which which fragments population. I actually looked at this in my master's thesis on howler monkeys. With a loss of habitat, you are also decreasing travel corridors, you are decreasing sleeping trees, you are decreasing areas to move and hunt. And so these populations are becoming more and more fragmented from each other, which also results in a loss of genetic diversity. And so these populations are decreasing, and they're also unable to mate with each other because they're becoming further and further pushed and pulled apart. They're also highly susceptible to diseases. The world of primatology, the field of primatology, suffered a lot during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't know if we have seen COVID yet in wild populations, but as you heard, the San Diego gorillas tested positive for COVID. The sanctuary that I worked for canceled all internship opportunities because they were worried we would give COVID to the chimps. And the emerging infectious diseases can really cause some major issues for these populations and just wipe out entire groups of these animals because their immune systems are not built to handle even just your common cold and flu viruses, let alone the COVID-19 viruses. And they also are in trouble because of commercial trade. Research, pets, the bushmeat trade, which we'll get into here shortly. But you saw those babies, they're cute and cuddly, right? Until they grow up and they are fully grown chimpanzees. And now they're no longer attractive. And so these chimps often end up in the biomedical industry or as pets, like in people's backyards, and then they end up going to sanctuaries where they can live out the rest of their lives. Oops, I pushed the back button. Sorry, guys. So again, kind of tough images to look at, but this is what we mean when we say the bushmeat trade. Mothers and fathers are primarily what's hunted and then processed for meat and trade goods, and then the babies are taken for the pet trade. So overall, it's a really traumatic, awful experience, and it's dwindling these populations pretty significantly. Go ahead. Yeah, the mining and logging as well too. Thank you for bringing that up, because it's a cheap commodity to get into. People can make a lot of quick, fast money from this. And logging is also really super detrimental for these populations, especially in DRC. There's a lot of researchers there that have shown that the logging companies and the logging routes are hurting these populations by separating them. They have recorded some deaths because of this. And so this bushmeat trade is fueled by this habitat loss. And so it's all one big connecting circle. And how do we fix this, and how do we study this and preserve these populations for years to come? Mm-hmm. It's incredibly difficult to do. And one thing we don't talk about nearly enough in our conservation efforts is that it's easy for us to say, well, no more palm oil, no more trees, no more this or that. And it's easy to say that and boycott these big companies, right? But you will be hurting these populations of people who do rely on these resources as a form of income, especially with communities in the palm oil industry. Families have been mining palm oil at acceptable rates for years and decades and generations. And now you have these big companies coming in and monopolizing everything, raising the prices, but how do these people continue to live? So it's all one big awful feedback loop of conservation, give and take. But we're trying, and there's good people that are doing important work here in these areas and are fighting the bushmeat trade and are helping to find better jobs and increase the economies that way. You guys have any questions about apes or cercopithecines, anything at all? I left some time in case you have some announcements for them. No questions? This was my first time lecturing course content, you guys. Thanks for being patient.